Right. Welcome, everybody. Hello. My name is Sanna Venharju. I'm from the Finland Futures Research Center. And I will be the chair for this afternoon session. So welcome. We have two very exciting speeches. I'm looking forward to hearing them. This session will run until 6 o'clock, but we will have about 15-minute break at 4:45. This session is also being streamed online. So people online, I ask you to send your questions to the speakers through Zoom. And for that reason, also people making questions in the hall here, we ask you to remember to ask for the microphone so that the people online can also hear the questions you're making or comments you're making. All right, so our first speaker is Erik Øverland. He's the president and chairperson of the board from the World Futures Studies Federation. And he's also a counselor at the Norwegian Embassy. He's the envoy for the education and research in Berlin. Erik is a doctor and has a scientific approach to futures research. He has published numerous books and articles on future studies, but in addition to that, he's very experienced practitioner and foresight in foresight, especially has done numerous projects on foresight, both in Norway and abroad. So please, Erik, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sanna, for those very nice introduction. Yes, what am I supposed to say? I mean, it's a privilege to be in this audience. I mean, to speak to some of the most prominent future researchers, I would say, in the world. So I'm very happy to be here. And what I'm going to talk about is some kind of a intellectual experiment. When I was a young scholar, I was very, I had a background from social anthropology, sociology, information technology as a different cross-professional subject. But also I was very, very heavily involved in reading classical philosophy and in particular transcendental philosophy. So what I'm going to say is to demonstrate, I hope, through this talk, is to see how future field can connect the dots among different experiences I got from different fields. Doing that, I'm going to talk a bit about the concept of what is natural and what is artificial. The reason why I think that's important is manifold, but the main reason is that I think we are moving into development in social political development now that we can't foresee. I mean, it's really very, very difficult to detect all the uncertainties and to try to also imagine what's going to happen in the next decades. That's a reason, and that's in my opinion also very related to the concept of what is natural and what is artificial. Because what is natural is somehow what we conceive as something given for us, and the artificial dimension is something that we have created and that we have contributed as human beings. So the main ambition of my talk is to challenge that distinction. And I hope I can make my point clear during the presentation. I'm not sure I can that, but I'm trying. So it is some kind of intellectual experiment, intellectual play. So the structure of my talk would then be, the point of departure, but also to show some current social technical changes that contribute to the blurring of what is natural and what is artificial, and also make some historical remark, also relate these kind of perspectives to the futures field. And I will use also my own federation, which I'm sharing as an example of how they historically have been dealt with this kind of problematics. And then I'm going to say a couple of words about the sustainability and Anthropocene and possible consequences of what I'm saying for those concepts. And if we got time, I also will dive into an alternative approach and also raise the big question of all, do we need a new kind of universalism? And I've also been experimenting with some conceptual frames and concepts around this, which I also have published in before. It's called a term I call universal perspectivism. And if we got time, we most probably don't have that time, but then I will also just outline some points for what I would call the third futuristic manifest. Is a third futuristic manifest relate to the first futuristic manifest from 1909, and then was an Italian in 2009 who formulated the second one. So I have the ambition to formulate the third. So, well, just as a point of departure, our perspective on what is artificial and natural are currently changing rapidly. And traditionally, artificial has referred to something created by human beings, while natural refers to something that exists without human intervention. We know everything, you know, we're born into society, we go into the nature, we go in the forest, we go in and go somewhere, you know, there's no one living. And we know that we have come into given circumstances, a given nature that are, you know, always been there. It's not created by us, but we are a part of it. That's one thing. And related to urban areas in which everyday surrounding is something that we have created. What I think is that digitalization, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other technological developments do not only stimulate radical change and innovation, these also impact our basic orientation toward the world. So it's also a question about perception. So what do we mean by that, the natural and artificial? So all this kind of development that we currently experience are also, you know, promoting a change in our perception and expectations and the horizon of our expectations. So I will go so far to say that what was once considered to be natural and independent of human influence can no longer be viewed in the same way. The lines between what is natural and artificial have become blurred. And when that is said, I mean, also the significance implication for our perception and worldviews, particularly in terms of long-term reasoning as futurists, because that also will influence our expectation of what we are looking for, what we can do, and what we can change, and what we can create in the future. And the way we address fundamental question about knowledge, truth, relation between humans and non-humans, realities should be debated, in my opinion. So, and it's also a lot of other questions that, you know, come into my mind if I go into this problematic. And that's how could future research contribute in the contemporary socio-political climate? How are we supposed to move beyond the idea of the natural and the artificial? And if you look historically, we see that for 50 years ago, the term sustainability within the futures field came with the futurists, by the way. I had the pleasure of going into the library in the second floor here at the Future Research Center. And I saw it was 2 shelves, a lot of books and a lot of archive material from, you know, the Finnish version of the Club of Rome, and also from the WFSF in the beginning phase, and which demonstrated how they, at that time, as futurists, not only engaged as, processual oriented facilitator, but also had a content orientation in a certain way, which is related to the upcoming new paradigm of social ecology, and also how you supposed to go beyond the conventional modernistic paradigm. So I'm gonna, dive a bit more into that. But let's get back to some these technological areas. I mean, I won't elaborate that in detail, but if you look at genetic engineering and synthetic biology, artificial intelligence, virtual reality and augmented reality, nanotechnology, 3D printing, bioengineering, biohacking, they always contribute to this blurring and to this kind of perception changes in our mind considerably. Genetic engineering, for example, and synthetic biology, I mean, this is fields involve manipulating genetic material, living organism. And if you go into, and everybody else knows a lot about that, I mean, that's nothing new in it, but if you look at more the principle, what does that really mean? Yes, it means that's what you earlier considered as something given, so that you can change, that's are going to be possible to change and to construct. So I think that's also is an aspect here is very important, the constructive, the construction part of it. Genetic engineering to modify DNA, plants, and so on and so forth. The picture about the mice with the ear is very spectacular. That's more a media thing, but that's not the point. I mean, we can most probably produce and create whatever we want from creature in the future. So that's only one of them. Same with artificial intelligence. I won't go elaborate in the details. Virtual reality, augmented reality, or mixed reality. You see that when it's about the augmented reality and the virtual reality, I see a very, personally, I got 4 kids. The oldest one is 32, the youngest one is 19. And with the 13 years between the youngest and the oldest, it's like 3 generations. It's if you relate it to the digitalization process. I mean, they relate to the world so differently that you couldn't imagine it for a couple of decades ago. So it's a very, very considerably different way of dealing with digitalization processes and how to relate to the world at all. And that's only, I mean, in the very, very beginning. So how it's going to be in 10, 20, 30 years time, we should find out. You are, I mean, you're actually trying to find out. So, and I just want to mention nanotechnology, 3D printing, bioengineering, biohacking, and so on and so forth. So if you look at this technology can evoke ethical, philosophical, and social debates about nature and human identity, and so on and so forth. And actually, they push the boundaries of what we traditionally consider natural and raised question about the potential consequences. And when I say that, it's I mean, it's obvious for the most of us, but is it really so obvious? I mean, it's the ethical, if you see in the research policy area, I mean, there's a lot of area that you can't make research on. I had, for example, I see that the BioNTech who produced which produced the vaccine for in the pandemic. They moved their cancer research to England, for example, because in Germany they are much more conservative regarding handling data because of ethical concerns. And you have a long range of such ethical concerns. So I think that kind of ethical concern is going to be more and more problematic to keep up with, because the development is going so fast that you really have to rethink and reorient yourself in this ethical environment in the future. And that also would mean that you also need to think principally through what this is really about. And that's what I'm trying to do, in the sense that the concept of what is natural, because the naturality is always a reference point for ethical concerns. And also sustainability concerns and all other concerns. And when the idea of a naturality is challenged and it's not there anymore, what do we do then? We don't know. We have to invent the relation between human beings and the nature in a new way. And we have to reconsider naturality as something constructed from the bottom up. I'm going to go more into that a bit later, but that's some of the ideas that is behind my what I'm trying to formulate in also this article. And I think if you look at the project about Mars, for example, I think that's a very good illustration of how you define a surrounding in which you have to create a nature from the bottom. It's not even air to breathe there. You have to produce everything. You have to construct everything. It's nothing there. So that's a typical example of how nature is supposed to be constructed in a very radical way. And also there's a lot of other, big building projects around the world. I won't go very much in detail on that, but you see in Saudi Arabia, for example, you have the Neom, the Line, and the Cube. Many of you definitely most probably knows a lot about that, but it's go beyond what you normally would have expected for engineering and building processes. And you have similar in Canada, and you have in Brazil, it's some exciting things going on, and you have in China a couple of things. For example, in China are projecting now city in the space in which they really, they can't rely on any natural givenness at all, and they have to construct everything from the bottom. So if I try to illustrate what I mean, if you go back in history, I just read about, it was 50,000 years ago or something, you invented agriculture. No, something like that. I don't know exactly the year, but if you go back when human beings were hunters and gatherers, they, moved around in a context in which you just take what was given in the surrounding. You took the bears, you took the plants and ate them, and so on and so forth. You took the animals. So the world appears that the natural givenness was, very hegemonic for you. And the artificial, what I changed with my hand, what I'm trying to change, was not that element wasn't that big. You made some spear and things like that. And you see, and later you can see, I won't go on the quasi-historical periodic description here, but my point is that the relation between what is considered as natural given to you, independent of your involvement, is that part is getting less and less in the development. So everything's going to be more and more considered to be artificial in one way or another. And so the line on the bottom there, in where it's nothing left in that natural givenness. So we really have to ask yourself, when everything is artificial, how are we supposed to deal with it? How are we supposed to talk about the nature then? We have to, then we have to talk about the nature that we have constructed ourselves. And then that means that we also have to rely and relate to this nature very, very differently than we have done so far. So, and also that we have to rethink the relation between humans and nature. And now we soon will go into the transcendental philosophical part of what I'm going to say later. and between subject and object, and between reality for us and reality in itself, to use Kant terminology. And it also have some consequences of how we consider the term sustainability and the Anthropocene. When nature is constructed, is it then appropriate to talk about a nature that is given, clean, representing an equilibrium and an ecologic harmony as a reference point to all kinds of artificialities and manipulation or moderations? The premises from what my message is to answer no to that question. The contemporary developments, both technological and sociocultural trends, are ability to difference between what we traditionally consider to be natural on the one side and what is expected to be artificial on the other side. So we can't talk in the same sense of this givenness and this, separate natural reference point to all other things. I'm going to skip all those questions here. We can go that later, but if you relate it to the future field, I think it's a very, very important question is to ask, how do we deal with this new constructed nature? How should we understand that human world, human nature relations now in the future? I just to illustrate that also this question a bit historically, we can go back to look at both the term sustainability and Anthropocene, but also to our own field. I mean, the WFSF was established in 1973 in Paris, and there's also a lot of number of people from all over the world, scholars all over the world, who wanted to see a change. And there was also political engagement. And also a lot of people from WFSF also was behind the establishment of Club of Rome in around that time. So as futurists, we then, in my opinion, have to ask if you look at the situation 50 years ago, in which there was, a lot of scholars, a lot of engagement from academics to change things. It's not only processual orientation, but also very politically oriented people in the same day. They want to break with the common paradigm at that time. I want to introduce something else. So it's also political engagement among those scholars. But that was 50 years ago. So are those categories and all those ambitions that were raised for 50 years ago still valid? Should we discuss sustainability and naturality and artificial on the same way as we did that time? I don't think so. We really need, as a futurist, we might try to find or try to get into the discussion what could be what can replace, for example, sustainability and the Anthropocene as a baseline for political orientation in the next 5 decades. I don't have an answer to that, but I think it's at least we should ask the question to try to what would be the dominant paradigm of engagement by futurists in the next coming 5 years, 50 years. So I won't go into all details here, but if you look at the change, just in the article that I'm referring to, I see that a lot of those engagement was a very critical approach, a critical review of the modernist Cartesian's relation with the humans and the world in many ways. So it was about to find a unity between me as a person and me as a human being and the world and the nature in one sense or another. And you see, in the article, I identified 3 such responses, and one of these more religious, esoteric, and sacral perspective. The other one is the linguistic turn. If you see, I don't know how many of you are familiar with what you call the transformation, or the linguistic, you know, how you interpret it, you know, how you use the language, and so on, and also the whole question about apostism, because you don't want to be modern anymore, because the modernity represents a very bad relation between humans and the nature, and between human and the world that we are creating knowledge about. So we need something else. And then you have post-formality, you know, we feel we have post-normality, and we have a lot of different postism. Yeah, you know, Ludwig. Okay, so that's some of the responses. I mean, you can go a lot of detail, but I at least I try to identify that I'm going to skip. But for 50 years ago, the main shift in the future field represented a global shift in approach. It's a global orientation. That's the first thing. A shift from cybernetics and system analysis to new sociopolitical awareness towards ecological thinking, sustainability, post-industrial, and so on and so forth. The critique of the Cartesian dichotomy between humankind and nature, between knowledge building and subject and realities, and elaboration of post-positivism, critique of predictions belongs to that, and so on and so forth. And that's good, and that's fine, and here we are 50 years after. And my question would be, is that valid in the same sense? Is it possible to rethink it in one way or another? So before I'm gonna answer my own question here, I just want to say two things about the term Anthropocene and sustainability. Just because the term Anthropocene is referring to a given nature in itself, which always have been there, that humans are interfering with, and also challenging, and also are a threat to in many ways. And the same is somehow also with sustainability. So the term, the nature in itself, is somehow the reference point for those two concepts. But if there is no nature in itself, in that sense, I mean, what do we do then? Do we need new concepts? Are they all wrong? Who are referring to sustainability and the Anthropocene and so on and so forth? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But the practical, of course, ecological activity and movement is very important. I don't say anything else on that, but more principally, we should really discuss it. So then I was said, are we so sure about the importance to abandon the basic distinction between human and nature, between humans and technologies? Maybe we should sit down and try to rethink some of the basic premises here. And then I always said something about it, what's natural, what is artificial, what is given before man, and what is created. Maybe we can't talk about that anymore, because the concept of the nature in itself is a historical construction. Sana is dealing with future consciousness. So maybe that could be one of the indicators that you can look at, indicator about conception of nature developing historically, something like that. Even the tree in the forest and the human body may emerge in consciousness as man-made. So if that's the case, we have a problem. So I could go into more detail about my reading, between other things of Immanuel Kant, and also other philosophers, but I just want to mention what how I am able to combine the spots here. is that when I was reading Kritik der reinen Vernunft, for example, I was reading these not as a kind of a metaphysical study and so on and so forth, but we interpreted it as trying to answer two basic questions. And this is the first one was, how is a continuous and reliable progression within the natural science possible? It's a kind of meta-enlightenment process. That's the first question. And the second one, and how to secure a continuous dichotomy between man and nature, the absolute distinction between man and subject and nature. So the second one is to keep up the ambition of modernity, but on the same side say that it's not a given subject, our given object for your idea, but it's also created through the development of natural scientific activities in the late Renaissance and onwards. So it's a kind of you know, the success of natural sciences is what he is reflecting about, and my interpretation of that philosophy is that he is really able to, you know, look at nature as something constructed, something created. He used the term Ding an sich, or the thing in itself, but that's also a philosophical question to express that kind of ambition natural scientists have to find out about nature, because they want to find out about nature in itself. And through that activity, they also construct that expectations of a such nature. So that in a structure of expectations that want to that we also futurists have to elaborate on. But okay, so Kant turns the fundamental ontological and epistemological question upside down. The question is not about what unites subject and object. The whole reaction in the late 60s and 70s, but the wondering on how a sustainable and continuous dichotomy between them over time is possible in general. And that looks obvious, but it's not. I mean, it's really a principal question to address. So now I could go much more into detail and discuss, for example, the linguistic turn and the linguistic and reaction to that. But I think that's so late in the afternoon, it's a bit too heavy to go into. So I'm going to skip it. I just want to say one thing, and that is, you know, with the red rose, because if you follow Hamas, for example, he would interpret it, you know, the red rose, you know what the rose is if you see your spouse give it to you for a birthday and so on and so forth. But a natural scientist, if he look at the rose, he's defining it as 40 centimeter high, it's red, it's a lot of thorns on it and so on. So he relate to the rose as a natural thing, he construct the expectations consequently to identify the rose as a part of a nature that is subject for investigations. And that's a different thing. And that's the new universality. That's the idea. And that's what brings as a condition for human interfere, because then you construct consequently what human beings are not, because the rose is not a moral being, it's a part of the nature that is something absolutely distinct to yourself. So okay, I'm just gonna yes. Yeah, that's about the intersubjectivity. I mean, the most of you know a lot about these things, but the status of this given world of object could be interpreted differently. The result of shared construction, the construction of materiality in itself, the existence of object as a whole, as a past experience, as an ambition of present determination, and as an orientation of future expectation, a separation between ideas and sensory impressions on one side and linguistic symbols and thoughts mediated can be disputed. So my thesis is then that's the lonely position of the semiotic Kant transformation, if you know that term, is not that lonely, because the intersubjectivity is created through dealing with the creation of a construction of natural images and natural and expectation toward a nature which you are in fact creating from the bottom. It is not the case that the thing itself to be understood as factuality, as a given object or representation of a quasi-unmediated thing, but it's a matter of creating a continually institutionalized expectation of creating something from the bottom that are not you and me, human beings. And that very interesting consequences for how we know if we go into the blurred field of, if you look at the science fiction movies, for example, if you see, you don't know if it's a machine in front of you or it's a human being, you Avatar, the whole Blade Runner discussion. So you have to find out and clearly define to know, find out ways to know that you have a machine there and not a human being. So the rose as a nature is an inherently conceptual indeterminacy, a concept undefined, undefined. What you in German say, begrifflich bestimmte Unbestimmtheit. So, and I'm going to leave it there. So just to close it up, because this is had consequences for also, also some conceptual of the area concepts. I see that today a lot of people are discussing things like metamodernism. We had a discussion on the listserv and the WFS recently about that term. We have the term planetarianism, we have postmodernity and other creations. So I've been also experimenting something that I called universal perspectivism. So universal refer to Kant, the perspectivism refer to Nietzsche. So it's a kind of try to avoid the conventional modernistic fallacy and also the postmodernistic fallacy. I don't want to read all that. I go, okay. So I don't know if I should go through the next two slides, but yeah, okay. But okay, let me say one thing. Universal reflects the human need to construct an absolute reference point for its existence, because you can't stay in a postmodern mode of consciousness. You have to go beyond that, but you can't stay in a conventional modernistic worldview either. So you have to construct something new, and what that is interesting to try to find out. Third, manifest futurism. I know me playing around. I don't know how many. It's the project. What I'm talking about is very secular in the sense that the consequences of that would be that God is not only dead; she has never existed. So it's a post-religious position. Nature is the same, is at the same time constructed and reproduced. That's the absolute opposite of the human. Man creates himself on herself through her and his construction of what human beings are not. Man could be a cyborg. The transhuman is always already human, so we don't need the concept of transhumanism because we are always already a human. So if we expand, the so-called original natural disposition of a human being, it's not that we are going beyond what is normally called a human. Future pessimism is resignation. And there's an inner link between increased economic growth, human liberation, and the solution to environmental problems. Information is matter and vice versa. universal perspective is an expression of what the individual call enlightened confusion or confused enlightenment. The civilization has just begun. So, well, never mind. So that was a very just a crazy experimental of half think through ideas. Sorry. But I just want to finally just mention our conference in Berlin, in Paris in 25th and 26th of October. So some of us are going to further try to discuss these kind of things there and other things. Okay. Also, did I have a question? I have a question to the audience. And is aging natural? Thank you.
All right, now, so we thought to inspire some discussion, I would give you 2-3 minutes to share your thoughts with your neighbor, and we'll then go on into the discussion. So what were your reflections? So what were your reflections on what Erik was talking? Or if you want to respond to his question about aging, but anything related to what Erik was just making. So 2-3 minutes. Sure. Start discussion.
Yeah, well, it was, you know, just crazy dance on the floor. Because it's so
All right. Okay. Obviously. Sorry to interrupt your discussion. Obviously, Erik poked many thoughts on you. Does anybody want to share what your comments or have maybe further questions to Erik, or share what you've been wondering? Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Erik.
My editor.
Yeah, I read the paper several times.
Good.
But I mean, there was a tour de force. Tour de force, I think that's something. It's a huge amount underlying that, which you went through very quickly. So would you mind repeating it?
Yes, that's okay. I can do it.
Okay. I would. It would be helpful to me, I think, and maybe others, if you just dug down without the slides, but just your kind of explanation of universal perspectivism, and you kind of playing with construction and the human perspective and natural and the artificial, so it's kind of swirling around there. But so how does universal perspectivism kind of contribute to our thinking about the future?
Yeah, I can go back to the example with the rose, because I think, you know, to interpret something as a sensory experience, and not only that you see that something is red and yellow or it's high and so, but the institutionalization of investigation into nature, that you also, through that activity, create and recreate. That's, in my opinion, the universal perspective. So it's not only that you create a nation, but you also create a systematic reflection and a systematic orientation toward a world that is, per definition, something absolutely different than that you are yourself. And that's the creation and expectation of a nature that are subject for your investigation. So I see that, and that's, you know, at the upcoming of the natural scientific activities in the late Renaissance and Enlightenment time is actually institutionalization of that universal perspective.
Hey, thank you very much, Erik, for a very interesting topic. Let me ask you a question, I don't know, provocative one. Let's imagine that you are an ant or you are an elephant and you are looking around. Would you think that we are natural people or artificial?
Well, I think
Because I think it's important in how we split ourselves from the world. I am an ant. I see you guys, and I think you are natural.
I think the condition that makes that question possible is that you have created a self-reflection as a human being for a long time. So you have the empathy and the ability to identify yourself in an ant and can try to put yourself in that position. So that's precondition is actually the universal perspective I was talking about.
I have thank you for the very interesting okay. Thank you for the very interesting talk and somewhat disturbing. I have 18 comments to make, but I choose only 2. One is by defining away the dichotomy between human and nature. My question is, will it make it easier for the humans to exploit nature or not? And the second is not the more relevant question after all that, how do we humans see ourselves when we are half artificial, whatever, no longer part of the nature system, no longer unique? What will be the meaning for the self-image of humanity?
Well, first of all, I think the term exploit nature presupposes that the nature is something ever given that the human being is a threat to. Of course, I mean, of course, you have to find good ways to deal with externalities and nature, and be, you know, smarter with your surroundings than we have been in the past 200 years. But in the bottom, you are creating the concept and expectation of what is natural in many ways, even if it's within the environmental policy area, or it is in conventional natural scientific activities.
Yes. Hi. Thank you, Erik. I also have 2 questions out of I don't know how many. The first is, I guess, I'll start with the bigger challenge for you. The bigger challenge is what's the nature of this experiment?
The nature of these experiments is human self-reflection.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if we talk about separation, we can also talk about relation. We all have relations with each other. That in some cases that means we have each other in our hearts, which makes us less separate. And do you believe that we can actually have the earth and all that belongs with it in our hearts, so that we are not actually separate from it?
I think the precondition that I can conceive you and experience you as a loving person as the same as myself, and not the same, but as a human being, you know, that are subject for love and ethical reflection and also care, is that we have been creating systematically a world around us, which is per definition something absolutely different that what the human being is. So the condition for moral togetherness is also that you actually have created the world and the materiality or the nature, which is something absolutely different than yourself as a human being. So that's the precondition for me to you, that we can discuss and agree upon ethical, moral questions, something like that.
Hi, Erik. Yeah, I have another question. Okay. I'm Stephanie Almberg. I'm at the Habicab Braunschweig, University of Braunschweig. Yes, I have a question. Actually, was also inspired a bit by one of the previous questions, because I'm wondering, this natural, artificial. There's also artificial being made. But what about if you think about nature? First of all, I mean, sometimes we say something is natural, an apple or whatever, but we're creating it in that sense. It's being planted and whatever. And then there's the other thing, if I look at ants and elephants, and for example, an ant, they create something. Is that artificial as well? Would you say that what nature creates itself? I mean, they use tools and everything. So what about those?
Well, I'm uncertain if you still should use the term artificial, because it's nature and it's constructed. Also animals also construct some surrounding. I mean, ants are building, you know, those houses or whatever. I don't know the term in English. And birds are doing things, so they're also constructing their surroundings. But I'm, you know, maybe we should invent some new categories here. Maybe we don't need the term nature and artificial anymore.
Hi, I'm Zoheb from the UIT in Tromsø. I may be speaking for myself here, maybe in a minority position, but I personally would have appreciated more explication of some of the points that you assumed that the audience would be more familiar with, some of the theories and so on. But I speak for myself in that respect. But my question was kind of like, for some clarity in terms of the the need for moving beyond the binary of natural and artificial. Do you think that this binary should be moved beyond, like these categories should be kind of like abolished because there was never a separation between the natural and artificial to begin with? Or is it more because now that through technological progress, there is no natural world as such left to make that distinction? Or is the answer, in fact, both these things?
Yeah, I don't know if I understood the question right, but so in my opinion, the term natural is used to describe a condition that is independent of human interventions in one way or another. And that image, that expectations, that is what I'm criticizing, because it most probably doesn't exist, because it's always already been invented in one way or another. So the question remains if we still should use the term natural as a natural and artificial in to try to describe and in the knowledge building about our surroundings at all. Maybe we don't need that anymore. So
Yes. Okay, so here's the last question.
Yeah, but if we, picking up on that, if we don't need those categories anymore and we break them up and things were free floating, epistemologically speaking, at the same time, futures or anticipation wants to establish itself as a discipline, and it's seeking strongly an ontology, maybe not of the future, but something in that direction, and an epistemology and methods that would distinguish it from other disciplines. So with this process being in place that you described, how can futures get a grip on something that you can present in academia?
well, to get acknowledged in academia, you might avoid me, but but it's definitely a challenge, yeah. But how to do it, I don't know. But no, I mean, you can do a lot of things. I mean, you can be a philosopher, you can do research in that direction in many ways. I mean, you can elaborate a lot of that within the conventional academic environment, and also a natural scientist. I mean, maybe he could agree with me. I don't know, you know. So there's a lot of potential here to also formulate in a way that also is accepted in the academic crisis beyond our field, I would say. Yeah, something like that.
All right. Thank you to audience. Thank you to Erik. So we have 15-minute break and we will continue at 17:00.
My main idea was
Yeah. All right. Okay. Welcome back. Now, next speaker comes all the way from Brazil. Rosa Alegria is the director of the Millennium Project in Brazil and the teacher Teach the Future in Brazil. She's also the CEO of the Perspektiva Consulting in Strategic Foresight. She's a long-term futurist for 20 years, but before that, 23 years. But before that, you used to be for another 20 years as a business communicating executive in large companies. She's a pioneer in strategic foresight. Oh my gosh. They are picking up some things from there. Strategic foresight in Brazil. So please, Rosa, welcome.
Okay, great to be here for the first time. So thankful for the invitation. It is an honor. Turku is a reference in the world in foresight. Studied in Houston at the time, also a great reference. So I'm very glad to share this session with Erik, my friend. It's a responsibility, a challenge to speak at the end of the day. And my responsibility is not to make you sleep. And mainly after Erik, with just such a thought-provoking talk, I will have my guide here, okay? Because I'm not so fluent as Erik in English, so I have some security in not making many mistakes and not passing the time, okay? So I will speak about the Transetarian revolution and the potential of having 6 generations living together. It is another provoking talk like Erik did previously. Questioning about some things, okay? So this is the first time 6 generations live together in the world. And this is a transitional world under many liminalities to be explored. So this will be the thematic of our conference in October, the Federation Conference, right? I represent these institutions here, the Federation, I work in the board, executive board, the Millennium Project for more than 20 years, which is a trans-institutional think tank of futures research. Teach the Future, which is a global movement that promotes futures literacy in high schools and primary schools, okay? So this is a very, very important movement. Pangera, which is a startup that promotes intergenerational relationships, and Perspektiva, which is my consulting company. So this is a paradoxical moment. And I would like, before going on, I would like to ask you all a question. This is the question I'm raising to you, okay? If you didn't know how old you are, how old would you be? I will give you some minutes to reflect, and then would ask you the favor to share with your colleague on your side, okay? Please join your friends. Yeah, it is not just. My children's always younger. Yeah. Okay. So it gives more time for that? Oh, it's okay. That's some people. Yeah. So we want to listen, going back, we want to listen from you how old you are, how old you are. No, forget, think of that you have amnesia. You forgot everything about yourself. So you wake up and you don't have no idea about your age. So what is your age? What is your feeling? We will catch up some manifestations, and Sana will be my catch-up help, okay?
So first comment here.
Obrigada. So I went into a frenzy doing math that I'm not really terribly good at, and then I was like, oh, 72, but then wait, if I didn't know, if I was living at that time, I wouldn't know there is a BC. There wouldn't be a BC anyway, so that's irrelevant, and I wouldn't know yet because I would still be alive, so I wouldn't know when I'd die.
Couldn't hear well, but she will help me. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. Sometimes you feel older, sometimes you feel younger. Yeah. Okay. It's a subjective. Old. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
The question is whether in waking up, I would ask my body how old he is, or my mind how old it is. I asked my neighbor if I could make a median out of the two, and he didn't agree. So
yeah,
but my body would send the first signal. So I'm
if you have a backache, maybe you remember your story, your chronology. Yes. Okay, thank you. Some other? Did someone get surprised with your own answer from yourself? Any surprise for yourself? Okay.
So in terms of body, 18 years, in terms of wise, being wise and having knowledge and experience, 500 million years.
Okay. What? Anyone else? No? Okay. So this is just a wake up moment. Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay.
If I understood correctly her question, she was confused with these years here.
Yeah.
I thought that she was thinking of her age at that time.
Okay, no, this is sorry. This was that was a mistake, because I will now show you why I put this. Okay, so who made this question? Is this guy? Okay, Confucius is from this time. This is the guy that at that time was just questioning about the experience of the age more than the chronology of the age. So this talk is not from me. This is really, really old, okay? So this is a paradoxical moment at the same time of potential generational synergies that we have with 6 generations together. We are also having an intense segregation. Maybe the most intense segregation of ages we have. Okay, so I'll just make some critiques about this kind of classifications, this kind of searching for every time talking about differences more than commonalities. My personal story, very, very short. When I started to be called someone, I realized that I was becoming old, and some people called me boomer and old lady, or third age, and I had a label, and my feeling was if I had to join a club, okay, you are boomer, you have to be together with the boomers, so please forget about the others. And I always liked to have friendships with young people. And now I am a grandmother, so I love to be with them. So I feel like a kid. I become a child when I am with them. I started attending groups, okay, intergenerational groups, people from different generations, and there was a feeling of discomfort. The young people making fun of the older ones. For them, they were out of date. Okay, they didn't. Their experience was not now more valid, and the old making fun of the young. Okay, but you know nothing. You just have to live to know what I know. So arrogance from both sides. Okay, so I started to question the value of this differences, this growing popularity of generational labels, boomers, X, Y, Z, and it came to my mind that obsession with these labels, and that some other researchers say the same, were constructed, and they were constructed by the industrial age. So the generational labels that we call a letter soup, a soup of letters, right? This X, Y, Z. You're a boomer, you like this, you're not, you prefer this or that, you prefer this or that, you want generation Z, you are more like this, or okay. There has to be a new look. We have to transcend this classification because they are industrial age tools and serving for industrial purposes, mainly the X, G, Y, Z, okay? It's something built by a system that wants to separate and not to unite different segments. So this is something that shows the transformation of the word. Let me go back. I forgot to say something. So we are an unprecedented time, 6 generations together. So let's think of the year 2100. 2100 for a child born today. What will be the world like into 2100? Think of your son, your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors. Think of that. How different generations will live together. Those who are about 40, maybe there are some people here at 40, will be 120. Some of you in this room, maybe, will live there or beyond there. Okay, if you are alive, for sure. If you live naturally, okay, without any interruptions. So in 2100, there will be more generations living together. So children who are now in grade school will grow up in societies filled with more and more old people, maybe with 7 generations alive. looking at this from a pyramid in the 50s to a square at the end of the century. Global demography is being transformed. Here in the darkest blue of this graph, the population structure in the 50s, it's a pyramid, increasing births in the base and narrowing the top with high number of deaths of the older people. So between the 50s and today, it was a huge widening of the entire pyramid, as an increase in the number of children. And that was responsible for the increase of the world population. From now on, is not a widening of the base, but a fill up of the population above the base. So I know that you are all aware about this, but just to make a connection of what I am saying. So we will have more and more aged people living together with young people. Today's aged population is the largest senior cohort the world has known, together with the youths that will not increase. Synergy for society is needed. Synergy among all generations is needed because we have many challenges. We have many threats for humanity to be solved. And to classificate X, Y, and Z doesn't help much. From now on, it's not a, I'm sorry, let me put this here. We are like that, talking about the workplace. This is a workplace data. 1 in 3 people, around 35%, admits that the company they work in spends at least 5 working hours per week in age conflicts, which represents a loss of productivity, around 12%. So the generational labels that we call the letter soup. You're a boomer, you are like this or that. So there has to be a new look, something beyond that. We are in the 21st century with so many things to solve together. Industrial age tools and classifications don't help much now. It's something built by a system that wants to separate, to sell segmentation of products and services. Let me show you now this classic separation, the classification, okay? I will not extend here because we don't have time, but in each one of the generation, I put a historical moment that represents the time that when these people were born, okay, quantum physics, the pills, the Apollo 11, the wall fall, okay, the emergence of the cell phone and the digital life. So generational segregation into exclusive social spaces was not known. In history, generations were linked to family. The social aspect of generation is something very new. In the Middle Ages, children and adults were the same. They were blurred. There were no separation in the day-to-day. For instance, the adolescence was something constructed. There was nothing about adolescence. The idea of youths is new. It was created in the early 20th century, where they left work, okay, because children and youths worked. They were like adults, and they left with the schools emergent. So they went to school, and they started being youths. So they became separate from the adults. Auguste Comte is a thinker, a non-thinker, who first associated generations to progress, okay? And Karl Mannheim, you must know, in the beginning of the 20th century, defined generations like this. I like this very, very specific, the result of many discontinuities produced precisely by chance. Yes, this is true. Each generations inaugurates a change, a big change. Here in each generation has a historical event, but the question I'm raising here is that we not we cannot be defined by generation, because the world is becoming more complex. We are living together more and more. We are co-living historical phenomena together. So only the year you're born does not define. It depends on your living. It depends on your race, on your social condition. So this is a much simplistic definition. Generations are really being redefined. Here, two sociologists, Philip Cohen, American in Washington Post, and Bobby Duffy, author of this book. It was launched 2 years ago. Age has become one of the most prominent political divides. It is increasing intergenerational conflicts, like we're being in a war, age war, and the media propagates this. Okay, so you have Greta Thunberg in the cover, the recognition of Greta in the cover page, but also showing if you read the story inside the magazine, the story is something like a war. Oh, sorry, a standard bearer in generational battle. So, okay, there are some dinosaurs like my ex-president Trump. I'm sorry, Bolsonaro. No, they are the same. They are the evil brothers, right? So I mixed up. So they are the same. Maybe one is teacher of the other. Okay. So they both, okay, mocked her. But we cannot generalize. This is not a battle. We are not living a battle of generations. And we have to escape this because it is very dangerous. No, there are very good people, older people working hard for climate change and for every sustainability issues. In my country, I have a wonderful 60 a boomer minister. She is a world recognized environmentalist, Marina Silva, giving hands to so many youth people. So, well, this is not true. There is some fun too. No, sorry, this is an image to, okay, this is what we need to do. We have to be hand in hand because the word is urging. So let's make some fun. This is something that the media propagates, okay? But this always existed. Challenge, age criticism always existed. Hi, sweetie, how was school today? You can read all about it on my blog. So generational conflicts always exist, and this is good. Conflicts are good for diversity, for co-creation. And some curiosity here. I will not read all through, okay? But Socrates talks about this, criticized the new generations. Plato, too. I like this one. Sunday magazine from the 19th century. Till 19th century. Can you connect with today's? Back to the same, yeah. The modern family around the herd. And George Orwell. So this is, this story repeats itself. But the question is that we are living more apart than ever. And this is really dangerous. So what this happened, what this separation provokes? It gives rise to ageism, defining what is the ageism according to United Nations. Ageism has three aspects: stereotypes, as we think. Okay, I think something very stereotyped, very fragmented about you. This is a stereotype thinking. Another is the prejudice. Ageism has also to do with prejudice. what is prejudice? I feel that you're not deserving something, you cannot be included. So this is prejudice, okay? And the third is discrimination. Discrimination is the act itself. I separate you, I negate you, I deny you. So discrimination, prejudice, and stereotyping. This is ageism. So I think this separation also makes it harder to develop sense of solidarity. Perpetuate other kind of prejudices and stereotyping, racial, ethnic. It's an avenue to other prejudices and division. It denies old and young opportunities to be together, to learn from each other. And it weakens efforts in all that is happening in, yesterday we be listening to Maya about intergenerational justice. A society that has age battles is not prepared for intergenerational politics because it takes harder to take a good program. So we have to battle this culture. So with focus on this classification, we are losing sight of the injustices. We have injustices. So I would not talk about intergenerational justice here because many other people have done that much better than me. But just some data here, okay? We don't have to forget about that. Young people have less disposable income than previous young generations, among other things. I'm talking now about income, okay? They find more challenging to afford housing. So millennials, it's difficult for them to have housing, to have their own house, and have insecure jobs. So this is a very funny, sad and funny at the same time. No, I'm a millennial, so my retirement plan is societal collapse. So we have to look at this intergenerational imperative. And when I talk about intergenerational imperative, I remember Jennifer Gidley, she was president of the Federation in the past. She is a great scientist, education thinker, futurist, and she did a pioneering work in 2007 in Australia. What she did, she put together different generations talking with each other, young people, adults, in a special space, talking about the future. And her conclusion about this experiment is that there were many benefits. The experiment could conclude that to put people together from different generations talking about the future gives increased empathy, understanding, community bonds, improved mental health. It's good for mental health, not only for the elders, but for the youth. Enhancing personal and professional growth, self-esteem, digital skills, school performance, so emotional support from each other. So are we doing this? Is this a practical? So let's talk now about my main topic, which is Transetarian. It's a little kind of weird word, but it means trans age, and a kind of a neologism that I created in 2016. This is a revolution because it is, remember, I had this personal experience when I didn't feel comfortable with being labeled. So this is, I said before, and here I bring an inspiration from Cora Coralina. Cora Coralina is a Brazilian old woman. I could say she is an improbable woman because she didn't go to school. She learned to read at home. Then she left home. And to feed her children, she had to be a cook, to sell books in the streets, to sell things in the streets. But she never published any book till the age of 76. When she was 76, she had her first book published, and she is now one of the most important poets in Brazil. She started at 76. And this phrase I love because it's my phrase. I think your phrase, I think each one of us carries many ages inside. When I am with the question I asked you in the beginning, no? Sometimes we are children, sometimes we are, we are old, sometimes we are middle-aged. So when I have my grandchildren together, I am just like a kid. When I have to take care of someone who is sick, I feel I have another age. So I come from the last century. I come too from the last century. Who comes from the last century here? I come. Okay. There are more 20th century than 21st. Okay, it is you. So this is from a poem, and this poem she wrote for a little girl, aos moços. It was dedicated for the young generations. This is real today. This is real today. This is a picture showcasing 6 generations together. Okay, this is in US. 6 generations together. This became viral. All these women. Okay, this beautiful young old lady, Cordelia, 98, a centenarian. No, she got to meet her great granddaughter, great granddaughter, which at that time was 7 week old. These are some examples from Brazil. Let me see here. Mother and daughter graduate in pedagogy together. This will become more and more common. 72-year-old graduates. This is a mother who comes to his graduation ceremony. Could we see that some 30 years ago or 20 years ago? No. So this is Transetarian revolution. This is 1904 and 2018. In the first, it is in Portuguese. I will translate to you, okay? But between these 2 words, there is a Transetarian revolution. So on the left here is a Brazilian newspaper at the beginning of the 20th century. It's 1904. A front page story. So what is written there? The bus entered the humble house to pick up a 42-year-old woman. 42-year-old woman. So there may be at that time many people in this room, many women are very old, no? And more than a century later, a 60-year-old, he's from Holland, okay? She's a Dutch lawyer. Sorry, he's a Dutch lawyer, goes to court to change his formal age. This happened because there is a behind story in this. He was in Tinder trying to get and when he revealed his age, nobody wanted him. So he was so and he said, I don't feel like being 60. I feel like being 40. So he went to court. So these are signs that may point to trends, maybe, in the coming years of this Transetarian revolution. So this is the ageless word. When I talk about the ageless, don't think about, I'm not contrary of this, okay, but don't think about surgery, plastic surgeries, or, the struggle to fight your aging body. No, this is not okay. There in the marketing industry, people say ageless in for products and so on. No. So the ageless word. This is a transformation in perspective. We can choose mutual respect. We can be with many people together from different experiences. We can feel that identities no longer define us, no longer fit age groups. Technology is no longer a wall between generations. For the first time in history, children are more knowledgeable than us in some aspects. They can teach us. It doesn't happen before. They can teach you. They have more knowledge. Chronology is less important than experience. And objectivity is giving way to subjective realities in age. So this is a diagram that I created with the three drivers I consider for this revolution. Hyper longevity. This decade is the decade of the healthy aging from United Nations. So we are in the decade of healthy aging. We are living 4 years longer than in last decade. So this is the result of medical and scientific revolution on the last decade. So we are doubling our longevity since the beginning of 20th century. Well, you know, giant corporations are investing thousands of billions of dollars in regenerative medicine, promoting and promising extreme longevity. There is the group of transhumanists, the Ray Kurzweil, you know, prophets like you can be immortal. So, but this is Erik has spoken about this, who can be something else than humans. So this is true, okay? And so there is a phrase of, I don't know, it's here, but Peter Diamandis, who is one of these guys of the Singularity Movement, he says, imagine a future in which age becomes a health state. Age becomes a health stage. Instead of simply answering the question, how old are you? You'll be able to say, I'm 5 years younger than when we last met. It's possible, yeah. So I will talk now about a very modest study that I initiated before COVID. It is just in the beginning, okay? So, but that has some insights. I will go very fast about this. So, I'm sorry, I didn't talk about the digital life. I'm sorry. I'm just worried about time. Digital life is another driver. Okay, we are becoming one digital super society. Zoom, serious, face-to-face, virtual, social network. So we are together. We are horizontal. I can be in a game with you from 80 to 10-year-old. So there is no breach in technology. And the other driver is the postmodern, the modernity. We are living in trans world, transgender, transracial, transinstitutional, transdisciplinary, and age is in the trans world. So this is something like I love what, I don't know why it is, the Baudrillard, a philosopher. No, he says, living in this transition is as if everything had lost the original idea, freed itself from the essence, from its essence, its value. It's all a mixture of everything and everywhere. So we are becoming blurred in every aspect of life. So age is the same. we are having blurring in ages. So foresight is to intergenerational studies. I have started with two focus groups. I started this in 2018 by my startup called Transetarian, and it is for intergenerational studies. So there were some two focus groups and online questionnaires involving people from 5 generations, 245 people, 245 people. So I asked them about the image that most translated feature for them. And you can see here, it is in Portuguese, I'm sorry, but in the first column, okay, it is the biggest blue is the older people. So they believe in the open future, so a blank page. And you can see here that there are not much discrepancies, very, very radical discrepancies about their metaphors. The quality of future is another question, okay? So the future will be better, will be worse, or be the same. So they are mostly positive. There are some future glimpses, and very, very interesting. I'm not reading all, but you can see that everyone here who spoke about different aspects of age is there. People feel the age. So people demonstrate that age is a psychological aspect of life. It's not just a number in the document. So we have to look at this subjectivity. Yeah, here are some phrases. When I go out with younger people, I feel younger. She's a baby boomer. I work at work, I feel 40 years old. And sometimes I feel older than my mom when I'm taking care of her. So this is some aspects of the need of reviewing the concept of age from the future, human agency. So people mostly believe that in human agency and the intergenerational futures. We have people willing to be together, but I don't know, there is no spontaneous movement. I think governments, institutions should have regular policies that organizes these important movements of intergenerational dialogues. I know there are, but there are few. No, there are few. I know Finland is an example of this in the Prime Minister in the Committee of the Future. I've been talking with Jana and some other countries, but it is few. Okay. Society. This is another question. And there are two findings here. The main social realities in the future. This was for before the COVID, okay? First is psychosis pandemic, not COVID pandemic, puts the word in alert. And second is greater coexistence between the youngest, and so a positive and a negative. So this is a question, who is looking at the exponential creativity that comes from this revolution? So we have lots to do. And the important thing is people like, not only the older that feel alone, abandoned, no, the young also likes. Okay, so we have to forget something about this, sometimes these letters and about the battles. How foresight can help to understand and connect generations. So put them together and take from them their views about this changing world, how they have different perspectives and what are common perspectives that can be transformed into actions, strategies. to use foresight techniques, the connection with all generations. It's so much creative to think about the future together. And age cohorts alone do not accommodate the needs of future generations. So this is the revolution with opportunities for social transformation. I think that the challenge is the same for young and for older. To think about the future, to have brain stretch, we have to train everyone. We have to start now. These are great opportunities for making the world accommodation, a good accommodation for those who will live till 2100. And till 2100, we have lots of opportunity to work together. Odes can be like human libraries, being the history alive. Imagine that you have a live library instead of going to books also, only. You have your grandmother talking about history with you. She or he has lived history. So this is really incredible. And also the olds getting mentoring from the youths, how to be updated in technologies. So there are many things to do between generations. What we can do here, some ideas, but maybe you have much more. So the important thing is to start. I have a network in Brazil with different ages. We work with foresight in education, and I've never been so happy to work together with young people. I love it. And I really, with humility, I also recognize towards them. I have lots to learn from them. So I have to stop the arrogance from both sides. The olds, maybe they don't know nothing in some aspects. They have to learn from the old. And the youths have also not to be arrogant and respect, like in the old times, the people. Because why are we going out now in this situation? Mainly the old people are disconsiderate of the economic system because we have industrial view. What does the industrial view tell us? You are old, you're not productive. But productivity is something from the past. You don't have to be productive. Why humans have to be productive? If we have machines, you have robots, you have, we have to be happy. We have to be, on at ease. So this is something from the past. We have to rethink. There are challenges. Nothing is so romantic, but we have challenges, okay? So we have to face this economic patterns and the changing economic patterns, the situation of older people being seen as a burden. We still have this culture. Changes in the structure of the family, exacerbated by the need for mobility. We have the sandwich generations who have to take care of the children and of the parents at the same time. So these are challenges. Changing relationships between the young and the old. Maybe understand there is a lack of understanding of each other. So we have to join them. In the future, we have to have skillful people to orchestrate dialogues. It's not sufficient, not enough. Okay, I include it. No, if you don't orchestrate dialogues, there will be conflicts. So this is a future skill, very important. And intergenerational justice. We have to go through all this, the rights and duties. I'm almost finishing, and I would like to stop. I have my manifesto too, Erik. You have yours, I have mine. This is a musical manifesto that I created in some years ago for Pangera. I don't know if it works. I hope so. It's a 1-minute video, very, 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 okay. I'm coming to the end. And, okay. Thank you. Before closing, I will just, how can I go back to the slides? Just to, I'm very proud of some initiatives I'm involved in. Yeah, thank you. I belong to the movement called Teach the Future, who promotes futures literacy, and we each year, we promote the World Future Day, the 1st of March, in Teach the Future, together with the Federation and the Millennium Project. But in our case, we promote for intergenerational dialogue. So we call a young and an old people, an old guy or woman, to talk about future issues that worry them. So these are 2 cases, 24 hours, the whole day, from different countries, many countries participating, listening to the youth. Youths need to be listened. Youths need to be on the table and in decision-making process. So we try to stimulate this. And the Federation, the conference in October, is opening for papers from youth emerging futurists, right? And please, disseminate this among your youths. And we also are promoting the next generation foresight practitioners, people from 12 to 17 who are leading or creating very significant projects that are proposed to change the world. So we are coming to the 4th edition. So please, we have a deadline, June 16. So go to for the Teach the Future website. It's teachthefuture.org. You can have all information. So this is my conclusion, and I hope I could pass a message for you. Thank you very much. Oh, I would like to in praise of the intergenerational futurists. I work together with very young futurists. They are incredible. So we have now emerging futurists coming into the stage. So in praise of this intergenerational, let's learn from each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. We have time for a few questions. Does the audience have any questions for Rosa?
I would like, I don't know if I have the right to ask one more question for them.
Go ahead.
If they don't want, okay, but I would like to ask you, think of a memorable Transetarian moment in your life when you were together with different generations and this made you feel alive, happy, transformers. Okay, don't need to answer, just think of that, okay? A Transetarian.
So a memorable Transetarian moment
Yeah.
in your life.
Keep with you.
Anybody wants to share such a moment or questions to Rosa? Here. Yes.
Okay, Rosa, thank you very much again for an interesting and provoking presentation. My question is, well, you're describing an intergenerational cooperation, etc. But let's imagine for a moment, and I'm not going to value myself what I think. Let's imagine for a moment that the Diamandis and the Cordeiros of the life, they are right, and we solve death, and then it will not be an intergeneration of 6 generations, but eventually whatever generations. That would be probably the huge change. Do you know if someone have studied this, all the implications?
No.
If someone has imagined?
As far as I know, no, there is no study. It's important to say studies about intergenerational relationships are very, very few. When you talk about singularity, transhumanism, no, I think there is nothing. Yeah, it's an important question. What will be the relationship?
Yeah, because
forever,
it would really stress a lot what you are describing. Why I'm going to bother about the next generation if I'm going to live forever, etc., etc.
I'm not evoking now the immortality in this topic. I'm talking about the hyper longevity, but not the immortality. Maybe immortality must be a punishment other than you know, a gift.
For sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay.
People are thoughtful.
Yes, they are, you know, trying to remember. Or
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may.
Okay.
So there were a couple of comments in the online forum for you, Pause. So there was one comment from Katrina Sivonen. She's a teacher at the FFRC. And she is saying that it was very inspiring to think of ages and connections. And she wanted to give a small perspective on that for you and for the audience, that she has memories of her grandfather, who was born in 1881. And she also has memories of her granddaughter, who was born in 2020. So if she will become as old as the grandfather, this granddaughter that was born in 2020 will see the year 2120. So through these family members, Katrina is saying that I can in my mind grasp 240 years. The personally meaningful time is much more than the own age. So she wanted to bring that perspective.
Very, very good perspective.
And then Ilona is asking, is age a fact? And Eli Stepanovic